On this episode of Talking Cricket, we've caught up with someone who's spending her time these days doing just that, talking cricket.
I never thought I'd ever get into commentary. It kind of happened. I got mic'd up as a player and, I used to just have a bit of fun with the commentary.
That's right. We've got former New Zealand cricketer and current commentator Katey Martin to tell us exactly what it feels like to go from behind the stumps to behind the mic.
I'm still commentating on players that I played with. And, when they're out of form, I don't criticise people, I just don't want to hear that at home. If someone goes to town on someone for 5 minutes, for me, I'm like, that's awkward to listen to.
Yep. The nuances of commentating in the women's game versus the men's game.
The game's a little bit different in terms of sometimes guys can hit 140, 150k back over someone's head, and that can be a little challenging to describe because in the women's game, there's the nuances around, it's a bit more technical, they're not the same pace, you have to do things slightly differently as a player.
And the behind-the-scenes story behind her famous "they have climbed their Everest" moment when New Zealand won the 2024 Women's T20 World Cup.
Pommy and Nat were incredible because 3 overs to go, I literally just had tears down my face just with the emotion of that moment for my mates out in the middle. And the heartbreak that we've had as a nation for such a long period of time in World Cups. And they picked up the slack in times where I should have been talking. And people won't realise this, but I 100% know it.
So if a masterclass in cricket and broadcasting is what you're looking for, then congratulations. The algorithm has led you to the best spot in town. Enjoy Talking Cricket with Katey Martin.
Talking cricket on ESPN Cricinfo. You know what this is about by now. We just love to talk cricket. And in particular for this episode, I think we've got a guest along with me where the title just matches what we feel inside. That it's fair to say that after a long and distinguished career, Katey Martin has taken to broadcast like a fish to water. And she's always loved talking cricket, whether behind the stumps or behind the microphone. Katey, is that right?
Probably not by choice behind the microphone. There's an ongoing joke that I've been a commentator for the last 6 years because in the world events I used to get the microphone turned up so loud that it was pretty much my voice broadcast. And the commentators said they used to have days off because I was talking so much behind the stumps. But yeah, what a privilege it is to get paid to talk about the sport I love. And I do talk, yeah. I've spent all day trying to build hawk packages and that, so everyone says you need to stop preparing so much and just chill out, but I don't know, you just love the game, don't you?
That's awesome. Even in that opening statement, there's so much that we can go deeper into, and I hope we have some time. And it's firstly, I must give you a belated welcome for being on this. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you. We've now worked for a few days together, so I'm going to try and pretend like I know you a little bit, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. But it just strikes me that there are many players that become broadcasters after playing, and then there are those that are passionate about broadcast. Are you passionate about broadcast?
I guess that's probably the way to put it. I'm passionate about the game and about being able to educate the viewer, entertain the viewer, and sort of do justice to the players out there. I'm a strong believer that our role as commentators is to add to the pitches and what the players are doing. The game is about what they're putting on, the fans, and sort of saying, okay, well, we've got the privilege as a commentary group to join you at home, so how do we make the experience such a great one for you, but also educate you in terms of what's going on out in the middle, maybe some technical aspects of a play. And our challenge is you've got such an array of viewers. You've got people that are absolute cricket tragics versus people that are just tuning in for the first time, and it's trying to meet every one of their needs. And I think I love the challenge of being able to look at something and go, how do we relate to all of those types of viewers? When I first got into it, it was sort of working out what type of commentator I wanted to be. I was a passionate player. I ride the game when I'm playing the game, and also ride the game watching it and commentating by just the energy that you get from watching. For me, it was all about how do I be relatable at home. I'm a Kiwi, we're generally down-to-earth people. I'm from Dunedin, so we're loyal as heck, and we're typically humble people as well, and quite understated. And for me, it was just trying to be relatable and be genuine and be yourself. And the challenge that comes with that is you get measured on your personality in a way when you're in commentary, whereas at cricket you can get measured on runs and wickets and stumpings and drop catches and whatnot. But it's a little bit of you that you're being vulnerable. So when you learn to be yourself, when you want to be that person on air particularly, then you have that aspect of, gee, if this doesn't go very well, then it's not a character assassination, but it's that aspect of, oh, I'm not actually that well liked as a person. And that's what I've stuck to, and hopefully it comes across like that on the coverage.
Yeah, it takes time though to find your voice, is what I've heard many commentators say, especially in your early years. And when you get into a commentary box and you often share space with people who've done it for so many years, there could be all sorts of complexes, potential insecurities. So I like that you've told us at the start what kind of commentator you wanted to be was a big part of when you started off. But when you actually joined a box and you worked with, let's start for the time being with just female commentators. I'll come to the boys in a second. But at that point, was there a sense of intimidation, insecurity? How did you go about actually finding your voice when you started off?
It's a great question. I've been so privileged to be able to work with the absolute best right from the start. My first commentary stint was, we had a COVID series, New Zealand were playing Australia, and I stayed on and Channel 7 asked, do you want to do the WBBL? It's the COVID, everyone's in a hub, it'll be just a couple of weeks in Sydney. And I said, yeah, why not? I'm a yes person. No isn't part of my vocab, which can be a little bit of a problem at times. And I thought, well, what a great experience. And obviously the challenge was still playing and then being able to talk about your teammates, your opposition that you've played against and you will continue to play against. And I walked into the commentary box and it was Mel Jones, Lisa Stalaker, Julia Price, a few of the experienced guys as well. And it was just the way that they embraced me was so awesome, and I was so raw. We as WEE is a term in New Zealand that we use, so that's a great wee shot kind of situation. And my first commentary stint, I was on with Mel Jones and Julia Price, and they ended up, I'd said we that many times, they ended up putting a little wee counter in the corner. So after the first day I need to learn and understand words that I probably repeat. But to be able to work with world-class commentators straight away and just learn, and I love asking questions, and it's always about how can you get better, and when you play sport, reflection is such a massive part. And so after every commentary stint, I would always reflect, what did I feel in that moment? And I'm probably the most harshest critic on myself. And I remember there was a time where it was absolutely bucketing down and I was on the sideline and one of the other ladies went to the toilet, the presenter. So I'm sitting there thinking, this is great. Oh, we're not going to get back on. And within a minute they said, oh, where's Erin? And I said, oh, she's just in the toilet. And they said, we've got to get you on. You need to be able to, the teams are going back on. We need to know how many overs are left, who's bowling what, etc. Well, I'm terrible with numbers and I didn't have any piece of paper to write down anything. And I stood in front and I remember the camera was there. And as you know, with the camera in front of you, you have to look down the barrel. And I hadn't written the numbers down. I'm dyslexic with numbers. So the guy beside the camera was giving me 4, there's three bowlers and so I'm like, oh, yep, we're welcome back. Yeah, we've... you
had to fill in as presenter,
But then I had the commentators up in the box as well, and they're sort of... I've learnt now, because there was no monitor, that they were there cracking up laughing, and down below there was the actual overs, and so all the information was there that the viewer could see, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah, we're back on at 3:52, and 2 bowlers can bowl 3, 4 bowlers can bowl 2 overs. Oh... And I couldn't get the numbers, and they were just mixing it up. And then, well, all I know is to use humour to get out of situations like that. And I could just start hearing giggling in my ear because I could obviously hear the feed from the guys that were up top. And I'm trying to look at this guy, so I'm like kind of staring at him and then staring at and it just become an absolute disaster. In my mind, I thought, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I couldn't get the numbers out, and I just said, oh, it doesn't matter. People have to bowl however many overs. And then anyway, they're upstairs cracking up laughing. And they said, do we even know how many bowlers are bowling what overs? And I walk off, and obviously I've been soaking. I'm a drenched rat by then because it was still sort of raining. And I remember that time. And the next day I turn up and Mel Jones, she hands me these cards. And she goes, you might need these for next time. And that was it. And I was like, oh no, have I done something wrong? Like, that was really nice of her to give me these cards. And I don't know if she was telling me off or not telling me off, but like, that was a moment of Mel's helping me out to say, hey, look, be better prepared next time. Here's some cards. I know it probably wasn't your fault, but it was just that kindness that she brought, with a little bit of humour as well. So yeah, every time I go on tour, I always buy cards that are sitting in my bag, so I'm always prepared with notes, and they're in my pocket and that. And that's sort of my first experience in, was someone like Jonesy just taking me under her wing, and those little funny moments around giving me cards to be like, you might need these next time. It's just shows how welcoming a lot of those people were in the environment.
And that's brilliant. When you told me about how you had to retreat to humour to save it, for me that's a win. Even I'm not even saying it as someone who's in it. I'm saying it as a viewer. If you're trying to sort of find faults on the broadcast, which you know the viewer loves to do, but then the minute there's a bit of humour, suddenly it's owned by the person on camera. So then it goes like, oh, okay, she's cool. That's the. And when you use the doesn't matter thing, there's an epic toss in the first year of the IPL. I don't know if you've seen it across anywhere on social media. I don't think it's there anymore. Producer tells me about it, how Ravi was doing a toss, which has of course become one of cricket's great events in itself over time. And it was match 48 of the first IPL. So everyone's still getting familiar with the names of the teams and whatnot. And it's maybe Kolkata Knight Riders versus Super Kings or Royal Challengers. And Ravi just goes, match 44. And we're all set for the toss between, and he forgets the names of the teams. They're standing right there, but and he just goes, doesn't matter, spin the coin. So for me, doesn't matter becomes the gospel of anything that goes wrong. So when you said, you know what, I don't know how many bowlers it is, doesn't matter, you'll figure it out, let's go. That just stayed with me. I'm going to check with Erin next time if she actually even needed to use the toilet when they had to slot you in draft, or she was just having some fun.
I've never asked her, and she probably doesn't even know that story, to be fair. She just come back oblivious to, has anything happened? Oh, no, not really. We're starting in a couple of minutes. That was pretty much the conversation.
So I guess it's so important to find people who are kind, who will make the first experience comfortable. And you mentioned Mel Jones there, and I'm going to come back to other commentators, producers, people in media that have had an influence on you. But it seemed like your initiation into women's cricket and your first stints of commentary, you look back at it, smile, and it all started there. I heard you for the first time in the 2023 ODI Men's World Cup, and I don't think I'd be the only one to have told you that, at least in my part of the world. Now we're talking men's cricket, big boys, the big daddies of commentary of all these years. Was it different?
It's so bizarre, to be honest, because I look at it now and I think I never thought I'd ever get into commentary. It kind of happened. I got mic'd up as a player, and I used to just have a bit of fun with the commentary. And when you back your mind, you're always saying, how do you make things better? Like, how do we make the broadcast better? And I remember in 2023 when I got the message to say, oh, they want you at the World Cup, and I was like, me? I've only been doing this for a year. Like, why would I be going to a World Cup? And it was so kind, because the year before I had done when New Zealand got eliminated out of our home World Cup final, the ICC said, can you come and do the semi-final? And I said, yeah, no worries, like, what a cool moment. But obviously the challenge of being eliminated out of a World Cup, you wanted to be there in the final, and that emotionally it was challenging, but it was an awesome experience and so fortunate. So then I think probably on the back of that was where it was like, okay, well, is there an opportunity in the men's space? I've been doing test matches at home. And so when I got the email, I thought, this is ridiculous. And I'd actually had a Fiji holiday planned with my family, my sister's 40th. And I sort of put a little bit of money down for that. And I said, oh, when do you want me to come over? And they said, oh, we actually need you to come a bit earlier. We've got some warm-up games. So the Fiji holiday went in the bin. Of course it would. And I remember my first game was a warm-up game in Hyderabad. And I turn up and there's Sunny G, and I thought, oh, this is the greatest ever test player for India, and I'm on commentary with him. And Sanjay Mandrake was there, and there were a few big Indian names. And I'm a cricket tragic, so I know these guys. And I was never a big name player. I was just a middling cricketer that had a good sense of humour on the microphone and sometimes could score a boundary. And as Elisa Healy would say, my front pad got blown out more than Shane Watson and Aaron Finch combined at the end of their careers. And so I walked in and it was only 2 people on commentary at the time. And my first one was with Sonny. And I thought, oh my God, what am I meant to do here? And I was on lead and I sat down and we were just chatting away about cricket. And he goes, Katey, I've seen you've sort of been up and down the order a little bit. The World Cup last year. And I'm like, what? And I was sitting there going, this is the greatest Indian Test batter, and he's asking me about my career. So he's taken the time to actually have a look and see who is this Katie Martin, because I wasn't a big New Zealand name or world name by any stretch. And I thought, and I was blown away. And that was my first experience in terms of a men's World Cup. We went on air and it was just like we were sitting out the back of the commentary room chatting about cricket. We just took that straight on air and just that comfort straight away. And I'll never forget that moment of how comfortable he made me feel, not just him, but all of the guys that were in the commentary box. And they automatically gave you respect. And I think the more you spoke about the game and the more you spoke behind the scenes, they understood that, yeah, I could read the game. Yeah, I probably like the technical aspect of it and how you can break down a batter's technique and how you get them out in your plans. But they knew I just loved the game and I was passionate. And that, I've never told Sonny that actually, but that always sticks with me, that very first day in a Men's World Cup, what happened.
That's a brilliant story. I mean, it must have made you feel something unique, I would only assume.
Well, it was weird because when we got back to the hotel, he had about 55,000 people waiting for him. And here's me just trolling off in the corner. And so it was just seeing such a difference in terms of what you get in the commentary to the fandom that people have for a guy like that.
You, of course, since have continued to make waves in the men's game. And I'll come to your very memorable moment of last year's Women's T20 World Cup. But since we're talking about the men's game, doing IPL cricket, we're doing this conversation while you're here for the IPL. And that also involves dealing with pretty much everybody who's at, you could say, the top tier of male broadcast in ICC men's events as well as IPL events. Would you say, by and large, it's been welcoming, or have there been moments of, being made to feel uncomfortable, being made to perhaps add a little more validation because you're a women's cricketer who is in a male-dominated space? Did any of that ever come across?
Absolutely not. I've never had that in my entire life. Wow. And what I will say is that I'm so fortunate that I've followed in the footsteps of people that have gone before us that maybe had experienced that, and they've paved the way for females to come through now. And Mel and I have so many conversations about this. I feel guilty that I'm in a position that I'm in because so many others aren't, especially women or female commentators. And it's, the guys have been so incredible to work with, and like I said, they're respectful of my opinion and they're respectful of what I can bring to the coverage, and they've never felt like I was a threat to them, even though I'm an expert, not necessarily a lead caller. And so, you're sort of having to put your expert and your colour is adding to why is that happening out in the middle, like what's the tactics, and the leads are a bit more about the conductor and what's happening. But they've been so great. I mean, Ian Bishop and I, we've covered that over the last few days. We just sit and talk about cricket, and I probably annoy him more than he'd like, but they just are passionate about the game as well, and they've always made me feel welcome. Not 1 ounce have I ever felt uncomfortable, and I think that just shows the environment and the respect that we all have towards the game.
Brilliant. Technical side of the game is big for you, and I want to get more into that, whether Katie Martin has always been a big cricket geek, which we all are at Cricinfo. Cricket tragic is something you've already said. But that aspect of getting so into detail on analysis, on technique, I sometimes think, are we running out of people that are interested in it? But I hope we aren't, because I love it. And there are a lot of us that don't. Then again, you're also being told to speak to multiple audiences at the same time. So I'll come to that aspect and how it came to you. It became a big part of your commentary. But first, tell me just generally about you when it comes to technical analysis. Where does that sort of passion and drive to get it deep into technique, etc., come from?
It's a good question. As a wicketkeeper, you're always sort of picking up cues of batters. And so I could see if someone had a low back grip, so therefore they would hit more to the leg side or a closed face, or they stepped across their front pad. So you sort of knew, you got an idea about the strength and weakness of a player. And then obviously as a player, you do research on them. And I just felt like that was, when I watch games, I'm like, what do I want to listen to? What would I prefer? Which is different for everyone, right? Like someone might love one commentator and not another, and there's no rhyme or reason for that. That's just their personal preference. And so for me, I was like, well, I'd love to be able to provide insight from a playing perspective, because that's how I first went into the commentary box. And so when I prepare for games, I prepare as if I'm a player, which takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, but I'd go through the batter's strength and weakness. Where are they really good? Where would you target in terms of that? And then, like with the IPL, for example, coming in the back end, I can see what sort of the trend has happened for a particular player and whether they've made any adjustments. And I just find it so interesting. And I think that adds for the viewers as well, because you're just providing them with an insight they might not know. We might say someone's, they stay leg side of the ball because of these reasons. But if you can visually show them why they've done that, what outcome that is, it just adds a layer into the commentary. Then you've got the people who have strength in understanding players' stories, and then you've got people that just bring so much energy within the box. You've got captains' views, and I think that's probably a wicket-keeping sort of trait of mine that comes in, and that's what I've sort of committed that I love about the game, and I think hopefully it's well received at home. Yeah. Sometimes I try and find weird and wonderful things, but which takes a bit more time, but that's okay.
But what I find really remarkable is, I would think that even for a former player, not all players are able to articulate their understanding of the technical side of the game as well as they may even know it. But articulation when it comes to broadcast, and usually from my experience, I've seen players stand out as great analysts over time. They first get in and dip their feet into broadcast, get comfortable with the entire thing, and then the technical side comes. For you, it was like, boom, like this is something like it's got me off my seat sitting in. I was like, oh, this is good. But it's also trying to marry in everything that you're getting from Hawkeye or from broadcast, slow-mo and replays. And we're talking about, at times, the men's game. You would have obviously played and focused a lot more on the women's game when you were an active player. So here you are just taking to it. There's no... It didn't seem like someone who's just doing broadcast for a year or two, if I can say that in a good way.
Very kind, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to get from is whether that's just something that you were extremely confident about, your own reading of the game. It never was second-guessed, because there always is the chance that, am I sure I'm saying the right thing here?
Well, I second-guess myself all the time, but I think that's also a female thing, and I'm probably, as I said earlier, I'm probably the harshest on myself. I'm quite inquisitive, and so I want to know how someone's trying to get that player out. I want to know, because that's how I prepared as a player. And so if I can give that insight to a person of why they got this field set, what are they trying to bowl to that player, how are they trying to combat that, what changes have they made, I just think it's just, I just like it out of my own interest, to be honest. And so when I first got there, my very first World Cup game that I said, and I learned that Hawkeye was a thing, which now maybe the boys don't so much enjoy that, but they're very receptive, which is great. They said, oh, we've got this stuff, this is the analysis. And I said, oh, great, well, why don't I send through what it was England playing, was it England, South Africa, I think? It was a semi. And I said, oh, well, why don't I just send through our plans against those players? And obviously I'm a batter, so I focus more on the batters. And they're like, oh, yeah, no worries. So I'd send it to the Hawk guy and he'd go, oh, cool, well, here's 3 packages we can build on that. And honestly, not all of the packages go to air. And it's a fine balance between doing too much and, trying to put things in there when they're not ready. Like we had one the other day that I was desperate to get out on a batting technique, but the timing wasn't right and the player got out, which was a little selfish from them, but that doesn't matter. But it's doing that work so that it's there and available, and it doesn't always have to be me put that hawk out and talk to it. It's going, how can I help the Hawkeye guys add stuff to the coverage? What are the stories of the games that we can use the technology to tell? And there's so much now, there's so many different bits and pieces of technology that we can utilise that is just another added layer on. So yeah, but I was probably sit here thinking, I wonder if Hawks text me, like I'm sure Tom's text me, I've got 4 messages about tomorrow's game that we've got, just to go, just to help them out as well, to go, here's maybe some things that for you guys to keep an eye on as well.
I'd love to guess here that you always credit the intelligence of the viewer. At times we're told in media, make sure that you're also talking to new fans and talking to mass audiences and, don't make it too serious or too technical. I'm sure you've heard these words in and around the circuit. But is that an accurate guess, that you're actually keen to credit the viewer's intelligence? You can get detailed into technique without worrying about whether everyone may get it, or it's still important to tell?
I guess for me, and I'm not sure what your thoughts are, but I think cricket is an assumed sport. So I remember my very first Test match I was on with Brendan McCullum, and Brendan and I actually grew up in Dunedin together, and he was my accounting tutor, which was great because I failed accounting, so probably as good he stuck with cricket. And I just remember saying to him, you know how like mid-off and mid-on and Test matches are right beside the stumps, and sometimes they're closer and sometimes they're further apart. And he goes, yeah, that's like, it's always happened. I said, but viewers at home, they don't necessarily know why they're that close. Like, why are they that close compared to white ball cricket there on the circle? He goes, no, people know that. And I said, no, I just think we assume that people know that. So we assume when we say they stay leg side of the ball or they're tipping over, but why are they doing that? Like, why are they tipping over? What's the outcome of if they stay leg side? What's the difference between Dhoni going sideways to create, a faster stumping than traditionally we like this massive give and that? Yeah. And I don't know what your thinking is, but sometimes I think we assume so much as cricketers because it's just automatic to us that that's what we do and that's why we do that. But at the viewer at home, they might know that, but they might understand one part of it, but not the why. And our responsibility is educating, entertaining, and explaining that why aspect.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think there is a repeat value in all broadcast anyway, and that becomes what fans that get irritated about commentary today call cliches. Why are we doing cliches? But cliches are effectively things that you've said over and over again and it just stays. However, certain aspects over time, I think a lot of commentators tend to feel, oh, I've already said this. But yes, the chap who heard it then is 20 years older, and there's someone else now who's new to the game. So I'm with you entirely on it. So I love that you make this a big part of your commentary. Let's talk a little bit more about just what preparation is like, whether it's different for men's and women's events, whether it's different for a league versus international cricket. What's preparation like for Katey Martin, the commentator? I'm sorry, I'm going to just interrupt you and quickly just tell you at the start, 3 days that Katey's been working with us, she's got this big notebook, and when she watches the game, she is writing down so much. And I sometimes think when you write that, oh my God, it's harder to remember everything I've written, but then the show comes on and it all just manifests beautifully, like it just comes through so sweetly. So I'm just going to give that a heads up. Sorry, Katey, please.
I need to get sponsored by a stationery company because I've got so many books. I've got 5 books actually sitting there, and like I said earlier, I'm very specific and probably quite structured in the way I go about it, because if I feel prepared, then I feel like I'm less panicked because I'm like, I think it's just a mental thing for me to know, okay, I've got all the information, I know about that player, I know their strengths, their weaknesses, how have they been getting at, how they target, and literally I've pretty much got a page for every single player, and then I have a review, like in the morning, before the day after the game, I'll always write down some of the key things that have happened, maybe some storylines for the next game, who that opposition's going to be against, and it's just when I turn up to the ground, I know exactly how I think the game might, like how these teams want to play against each other, what the nice matchups are and why. Like, why does Mitchell Starc always get Travis Head out sort of situation, to understand those stories. And honestly, it takes a lot of time, and I spend hours and hours and hours and watching videos, but it's just the way that I feel the most prepared, and it's different than others, and what I do isn't right or wrong compared to what someone else does. It's what gets you in a position where you know so much, or you've got the information there as you need. And I love reading stories about players. I mean, Ian Bishop's, he's the encyclopedia of cricket, but I find it so cool to go, man, that kid, he literally, moved to a shop, a dairy that he was working at. That dairy, lived in the back of the house, and he'd go to training for 8 hours a day, and he'd go home and have to work in the dairy and earn money. And I'm like, for New Zealand, we just went and played in the backyard, and our parents bought us a cricket bat, and it's those types of stories that we don't know and that viewers maybe don't know as well. And I think it's our responsibility as well to share a little bit more background. And so it's looking at that aspect as well, the softer side of the sport, and I guess what that means to a 14-year-old kid to score 100 in the IPL. Like, what does it actually mean? Because he's got mum and dad at home, brothers, sisters, whatnot, going, we've given up a whole lot of our life for our child to be successful like that. And it's, I guess, making sure I'm prepared to know that stuff about the players, because it just adds that little bit of softness on. So it's, hours and hours and hours, but it's also great fun and also very tiring, but yeah.
It takes a lot of work. You put in the preparation. All I can tell you is that all we hear is the eventual 4 overs that you get, and maybe the 9 minutes in those 4 overs if it's the IPL, but it shows, and it's a real pleasure to listen to. However, with success as a commentator, that too reasonably early in your broadcasting career, I think it's still only, 5, 6 years? You said the first WBBL was COVID.
Yeah, so this is my 5th year.
Fifth year, right. So success as a commentator, doing the big gigs. I'm sure it also comes with its share of, I can't find a better word for it, but a little bit of jealousy perhaps at times, around in and around the box. I know for a fact that there are, when you work too hard, they're almost sometimes put down for working too hard, and you don't like it, but you know that you still have to do it. I wonder if you've sensed that your success has also made it a little harder at times when it comes to environments with colleagues or in the big leagues.
Not outwardly that I would know, to be honest. There's always, you always find your own path in commentary. Some people will get stints and other people won't, and vice versa. Someone will go on a tour that I don't get asked on, and that is so okay with me, because I'm a big believer in wherever you're destined to sort of go, that's where you'll go. And I'm probably not going to be everyone's cup of tea, because people don't, sometimes I can be absolutely silly, like when I'm with some of the guys, I can have a great laugh on air, but sometimes people don't want that. And if you're slightly tired, you might be a little flatter in your voice than you need to be, or you're a little bit overexcited, and that comes across, and sometimes viewers don't like that, and I'm so okay with that, because like I said earlier, you either like someone or you don't like someone. But I've been so well supported, and there's a couple of there's another female at home, and me and her are great friends, and I've got more opportunity than she has, and sometimes I think people have the right to be jealous, but they're so supportive, and I know that historically sometimes the environments aren't like that, and maybe in different parts of the world it can be quite different as well. But I'm a pretty fortunate position.
I think what I picked up from you is my conversations with a lot of the female cricketers that we consider as the pioneers, the Mel Joneses and the Lisa Stalakers and Isha Goa, those that made it into male comm boxes more recently in the last, say, 5-6 years as broadcasters finally opened its eyes. I think that's where I'm getting a lot of the impressions of these challenges, where now it's a much better space. So you have people like those to thank, and I think you've brought that up early in our conversation too. Brilliant.
Mel and I have had those chats, and the conversation.
I'm sure her stories might be a little different. Yeah.
Exactly, and for her, it's going, what do you give back to the next person? So if another player, remember Sophie Devine did some stuff in Australia, and she messaged me and said, can I have some advice? Well, that was the worst point, because 55 messages back, I was like, is this enough? But that's, it's our responsibility as females, and also, with the guys as well. If someone's new in there, how do you help them out, just like I've had that? And that's what I feel is my best way of giving back.
Right, so just comparing women's to men's cricket now, whether you find one easier than the other, one different to the other in any way, or is it pretty much the same as far as broadcasting goes?
It's definitely different. With the men, I love the fact they tinker so much with their technique, so it helps me with my Hawkeye analysis. The game's a little bit different in terms of sometimes guys can hit 140, 150k back over someone's head, and that can be a little challenging to describe, because in the women's game, there's the nuances around, it's a bit more technical, they're not the same pace, you have to do things slightly differently as a player. I think the biggest challenge in the women's game is I'm still commentating on players that I played with, and when they're out of form, I don't criticise people, I just don't want to hear that at home. If someone goes to town on someone for 5 minutes, for me, I'm like, that's awkward to listen to. Yeah. And I don't think people want to listen to someone getting bagged left, right and centre. That's my own personal opinion. So that's not my style in commentary. But when your best mate's not scoring runs, you sort of go, you have to explain why they're not scoring runs. But what I would say on air is what I would say to that person, whether it's a male or female anyway. So that's probably the biggest thing, is commentating on people
It's going to come to that, especially as a fairly recently retired player, a number of your colleagues still playing the game or And we've seen this actually pick up some mainstream news recently, the Women's Ashes, Alex Hartley and her comments, where a number of the England players even went to the degree of not wanting to be interviewed by her. And I wonder what that does as a precedent for the rest of the industry, where you stand on it. It's one thing to be uncomfortable about criticism, but then there's another complex when it comes to speaking about the fitness or the bodies of women in the women's game versus, say, men in the men's game.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it's a space that you don't want to go down around people's body shape and that. Because, Freddie Flintoff's just come out about someone had mentioned about his weight and he ended up getting bulimia, and I've got experience that within my family. So that's quite a sensitive area.
Yep.
But I think working with Alex at that time for Channel 7 in Australia, she actually found that really challenging because she got supportive messages, she got abusive messages from people. You know, these are players that she played against, and she has such a passion for England cricket, especially England women, and she just wants that team to be better. And I think the word fitness is such a word that then people start going down around looking at people and how they look. And that's not necessarily it. Sometimes the least fittest people are the skinniest people. And I know it was definitely challenging for her to deal with that situation and walking out onto the ground and knowing that players are looking at you like with that disdain in a way. That was a real challenge for her. But generally the England squad were great with her. Like I was there, they were definitely all good, but that's something that I guess as a commentator, you have to be conscious of I guess, the bigger picture, and it's also responsibility on players that you're not igniting a fire from the public that get down on players anyway. I mean, some of the messages you get when you're not performing very well, I had that as when I played, and now I know players get that as well as commentators. It is really hard to deal with, and I think people sometimes think that we're pretty immune to all of that, but you still get, I don't really go on social media in terms of reading stuff, but you still get private messages that you still see.
Yeah.
And it does hit you in the heart a bit because you're like, oh, I'm trying so hard and I've done so much here, that it can be a real challenge for a person to deal with that stuff.
I'd like to extend on exactly that next, social media. It's a big part of your broadcast, any broadcaster, any public figure's career these days. In fact, it's a big part of everybody these days. But in many ways, we tend to think sometimes what you get on social media can influence you in so many ways, positive and negative. So there would be so many people went, oh, Katie Martin's an amazing commentator, wow, lovely to hear Katie Martin. And it's so easy to get sucked into that. Yeah. And I wonder what sort of experience you've had so far as you've made sort of pretty significant strides in a reasonably short span of time.
Yeah, generally speaking, I've had some really lovely messages, like people message, and I try and respond and say thank you as much as I can because they've gone out of their way to do that. But also, I don't mind people, if it's not abusive and people go, look, we didn't really like this or that, or it's actually a way to learn as well, because you'll know this, sometimes in this industry, feedback is one thing you don't get. Sometimes your feedback is not getting a gig.
Yep, that's it.
And I'm always asking for feedback, and you want the honest feedback to say we need you a bit more doing this, or we want you a bit more doing that. And that's great because it helps me learn and develop as a commentator. And sometimes if someone doesn't quite like something, that also helps you. It's just the mechanism of how abusive it is versus constructive feedback I love. And people more than happy to send me through whatever they like. And that is the only way that I can get better as well as your colleagues. But I don't actively seek out anything. It's not a thing for me, and I learnt that as a player, that especially the back end where I was turned professional, you don't want to rely on the feedback on social media to determine who you are as a person and what your feelings are. And you'll know this just as well as I do, that it's the trusted people around you. I'm very lucky. I've got Dad used to commentate on rugby as a big rugby union man in Dunedin, and he, every time I rang him, it was always negative to start with. And Mum used to tell him off because I said, "Is there anything positive, Dad?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, but," and it was constructive feedback from Dad. But I know that I can talk to him, and I've got other people that I'm very connected with to say, what's your thoughts on this? What do you think on that? And you know, I'm so lucky that people have backed me in this role, that they can give me the feedback that I need. Yeah.
At the top of your head, people that have been instrumental in your growth as a broadcaster, your inner circle, if you're comfortable telling us. I know you've said Mel Jones, and I think Bish will squeeze into that
Bish,
too.
Absolutely.
Not just commentators, could be producers, TV people. I think we have one in common that you'll mention.
Yeah, well, Ajesh from the ICC, who has put so much faith in me, and he gave me my first opportunity at a World Cup, the Women's World Cup, and yeah, we had a laugh because the other day he said, I was hoping that you'd get eliminated so you could do some commentary on your home World Cup, and I said, I'll remember that. But yeah, he's like shown faith to be able to give me opportunities, and I've got no doubt that me being here in India, he's had some influence on that as well, and I'm so grateful. And saying this yesterday, sometimes it takes giving someone an opportunity, and they don't understand the importance, like how important as it is for you as a person to go. And I'm so grateful, like for every opportunity that I've got given, and it's my responsibility as to what I do with that. Alex Lewis in New Zealand, he was the EP for in my very first gig for Spark Sport, and he was the person that I had a conversation with around what style of commentator I wanted to be, and he's not working in that space now, but he was someone that had so much faith in me. Chris Jones at Channel 7, he gave me my very, very first opportunity at Channel 7, and he's sort of like a brother to me, because we're just that type of people that we get on so well, and I talk to him a lot about commentary, and you know, every year I get to go back to Australia. Having a Kiwi doing a women's domestic and women's internationals in Australia is a massive thing, and I definitely don't take that for granted. Obviously, I mentioned Dad. I'll have to say Dad again, but yeah, he's a guy that I know that if I'm struggling a bit, I can turn to him, and he can just give me a little bit, and he.
Does Dad still do that though? It's been a few years now, but does he still watch and listen into?
Oh, every game, yeah. Mum, every time Mum watches, she always comments on what I'm wearing. So we've gone through that process of maybe not so much talking about that, but. Would
you do me a favour, and if Dad's watching our shows, could you ask him for feedback from me as well?
Yeah, Dad. Dad, you'll see this, because no doubt I'll send the link. Mum will find the link. Mum had to get Instagram so she can see all the stuff on social media. So no doubt she'll see this. But yeah, he's been very good in that respect to help out.
Right, I'm going to end on a slightly lighter note. How did the equation or relationship evolve when Katie Martin went from friend and teammate with your Susie Bates and your Sophie Devines and your Millikers to commentating with them at times, having to analyze a poor shot or a leap run of form when you bumped into them in different sides of the field?
I did a Cricinfo interview actually, and it was said about, there was the narrative of Sophie shouldn't bat in the middle order, and I just think she's one of the most destructive players in the world. And I said, yeah, like I think she could open the batting, like it's an option. But I understand why she's not. And I thought, I said to her, are we all good? Like, I know I said that, and she was like, I just get sick of everyone saying that. And I was like, well, we're all good, eh? And she was like, yeah. That was a very Kiwi sentence, and I'm so sorry. Yeah, but they understand, and you know, both Susie and Soph have done commentary as well. And Melly said, don't try and give away how I bowl my googly, because it got to the point I was like, Melly, it's really interesting, so I'm going to have to say it. And so then I'd build hawks on most series around where she releases it, how's it different, what you pick up in terms of her run up and that. But yeah, they're very, very supportive, and that's what mates are for.
I don't think you giving any more info is helping batters, so I think she's got that. Just to finish off, Katie, if you want to just once again redefine through your own experiences and through working at the highest level, what according to you are the hallmarks of good commentary?
I think just people that are welcoming you into their lounge. Like we've got, as I said at the start, for us to be able to be in such a privileged position, to attach our voices to some historic moments. You know, we've got Ravi when he does the toss, we've got Ian Smith, the barrister margins in 2019, like that stuff is in history, and I just think the way that you can hear the joy in our voices when we're talking about the game, and I know that everybody that's in that commentary box is genuinely passionate about the game, passionate about bringing across, to the audience about how much we love the game and how much we're trying to bring you along with us, that you're pretty much sitting beside us while we're talking about the game. For me personally, I think that's what commentary is all about, and I get to sit in the back and listen to the best commentators that have ever donned the microphone per se, and just absorb and learn so much off them. And and coming here in India and just then seeing the fandom around the sport, it just honestly brings a smile to my face. And I look forward to every time when I'm like, right, what time's the car here? When can I get to the ground? When can I sit in the Hawk Des? When can I sit upstairs and talk about cricket with Ian Bishop? And then when can we get this going so we can bring a great coverage to the game?
Yeah. On that, you've had your own little touch to history, haven't you? Let's go back to the winning moment of the New Zealand T20 World Cup last year, climbing their Everest. Thought about it, had a few lines prepared just in case, or just everything on the spot? All emotion.
It's a good question. It was about 5 over, there was 6 overs to go, and I got a tap on the shoulder from Ajesh, and he said, I was on the last stint, and it was Pommy, Nat, and me.
Yourself, yeah.
And New Zealand were obviously in a very good position, and he said, if New Zealand win, I want you to call the moment. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't, Ajesh. And I had a meltdown. I was like, I can't do it. I'm not ready. This is not my job. Like, I've never done this before. I've got to do justice to that moment. Like, this is huge in New Zealand cricket's history. And he said, you'll be fine. And Pommy and Nat were incredible because 3 overs to go, I literally just had tears down my face just with the emotion of that moment for my mates out in the middle, and the heartbreak that we've had as a nation for such a long period of time in World Cups. And they picked up the slack in times where I should have been talking. And people won't realise this, but I 100% know it. I should have been talking in moments to build that up, and I just physically couldn't speak because of the emotion that I had around seeing my mates literally have one hand on that trophy. And when it happened, the Everest stuff I had that written down and I had a couple of other bits and pieces written down just in case, so I knew that I wouldn't muck it up. But Everest is a nod to obviously history with us climbing Mount Everest, and that was literally what I felt that would mean in terms of for that group of players and the country as well. And it just happened to come out, and I said it as slow as anything, which was weird for me because I talk so fast. And I apologise about that, but when I get enthusiastic...
I can almost see the emotion building up again, just talking about it here on. Speaking of Ian Smith, you mentioned the heartbreaks. He was part of a number of those heartbreaks before that, and I wonder if you've had much of an interaction with him. I'm sure you've worked together back home, but as he sort of said, the one New Zealand final that, I wasn't on and you were, and we end up on the right side of it. Any banter with Smithy?
No, he's great. I always make sure I do keeping analysis when I'm on with him because you don't actually, he's a New Zealand test keeper and you don't ever really hear him talk about that. And he's like a little kid at Christmas when you see him talk about wicket keeping. But I remember that moment with his hands in his head and at 2019 we're going to a super over, and I guess I watch and learn that kind of stuff off how those guys go about it. And no, he's been great. He's been so welcoming and very supportive. And no one, in my opinion, will capture moments like Ian Smith does because I don't know, he must have a dictionary up in that brain because I don't have those words or sayings that he does. And he's very supportive and someone that I think a lot of commentators look up to in terms of how they go about providing the right words for that right moment.
Yeah, it just comes so easily for Ian Smith. It's awesome. Time's flying, but I do have to let you go at some time, even though we could do about a 4-part season on this if it were up to me. But I think on a parting note, Katey, I think the most apt thing to ask you on your way out is your 1-point or 2-point advice for young girls or maybe current players, female players, who aspire to be broadcasters. What's the most important thing for them to keep in mind?
I think for me it's about the game and what's happening out there. Provide your personality. I think that's what people want to see, and people want to be engaged by relatable people. I think we're shifting in terms of that respect. So just give it a go. Bring your best self across, and no doubt that will then cross over and people can hear that on air. And It's a great job. It's not even a job. You know, this isn't even a job. We're literally talking about cricket. And how fun is this?
This has been so much fun. Katey, thank you so much for spending some time sharing all of that with us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, boss.
Katey Martin on Talking Cricket on ESPN Cricinfo.